I've been thinking about writing this for a while now, not because I want advice or because I'm looking for people to tell me I did the right thing, but just because I need to put it somewhere outside my own head. Maybe that'll help, I don't know. I'm 59 years old, divorced since my daughter was 12, which has been a long time now. I work as a radiology tech at a hospital about 20 minutes from my apartment, steady work with decent benefits. Nothing special, but I've been doing it for over 30 years. My apartment is small, 2 bedrooms, one of which I use for storage mostly, and the building is older but well maintained. I keep things simple in my daily routine, going to work and coming home, watching some TV, reading sometimes, and on weekends I'll go hiking if the weather's good. That's about it. And I'm not complaining because it's a quiet life, and I'm fine with that. My daughter is my only child, and after she got married about 8 years ago, I started helping them out financially. Her husband had just finished his MBA and was starting a new position at a consulting firm while she was working part-time doing marketing for a local company. They wanted to buy a house right away, which made sense to me at the time, but real estate in their area wasn't cheap and they needed help with the down payment. I had some savings put aside, not a huge amount, but enough to make a difference, so I helped them out. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, but then there were other expenses that kept coming up. The mortgage was higher than they'd planned for. There were repairs on the house that needed doing. Then her car needed replacing. And then there was furniture because apparently the house needed to look a certain way. I started sending them money every month, not as a loan, but just as transfers, $2,000 or sometimes $3,000 depending on what was happening that month. It became automatic after a while because I'd set it up through my bank, so I wouldn't even have to think about it. It just happened. I didn't mind at first because she's my daughter and you help your kids when they need it. That's what parents do. But it kept going, year after year. And I'd mentioned maybe they didn't need as much anymore now that his career was moving forward and she'd gone full-time at her job. She'd always have a reason why they still needed help, saying the mortgage was brutal or the property taxes went up or they were building their savings for the future. I didn't push back hard. I just kept sending the money and cut back on things for myself. I didn't take vacations, drove the same car for 12 years, didn't buy new furniture when mine started looking worn, and I told myself it was fine because I was helping my daughter build a good life. That mattered more than a trip to Colorado or a nicer couch, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. A few weeks ago, she called to tell me about her birthday party, turning 32, and they were hosting it at their house, which is a nice place, probably 4 times the size of my apartment with a big backyard and one of those open-plan kitchens you see in magazines. She said it was going to be a dinner party with her husband's parents coming, some of his colleagues from work, and a few of her friends. She talked about the menu and hiring someone to help with the setup and getting the right wine, and it sounded like a lot, but she was excited, so I was happy for her. I asked if she needed me to bring anything, and she said no, just show up. So I offered to come early and help set things up, but she said that wouldn't be necessary. I figured maybe she had it all under control and didn't think much more about it. Then a couple days before the party she called again, and her tone was different, more careful than usual. She started by asking how I was doing, which she doesn't usually do, and then she said she wanted to talk about the party. She said the guest list had gotten more formal than she'd expected, that her husband's boss was coming now along with some important clients, and his parents were very particular about these kinds of events. She was worried about the optics. That's the word she used, optics, and I didn't really understand what she meant at first, so I just waited for her to explain. She said it might be better if I didn't come, not because she didn't want me there. She made sure to say that, but because the dynamic would be complicated with too many different kinds of people. She didn't want me to feel uncomfortable, she said. Her husband got on the line, then, and I could hear him in the background before he spoke. It might be better if you sit this one out, he said. We can do something else, just the 3 of us. I didn't argue with them or ask questions. I just said okay and ended the call. I sat in my kitchen for a while after that, evening time with it getting dark outside, and I didn't turn on the lights, just sat there in the dimness. Then I got up and went to the drawer where I keep my bank statements, which I don't usually look at much since everything's online now, but I still get paper copies mailed every month and file them away. I pulled out the folder and started going through them because I wanted to see the numbers laid out in front of me. I got a calculator and started adding things up, the down payment on their house, the monthly transfers, the car, the times I'd covered their credit card bills when things got tight, the furniture and appliances, the emergency fund I'd given them last year when his bonus didn't come through. I kept adding, and it took me over an hour to go through everything because I had to check multiple years of statements. When I finished, I looked at the number on the calculator for a long time, and it was more than I'd saved for myself over the same period, significantly more. I'd been putting aside a little each month for retirement, but not much because most of my extra income had been going to them. I turned off the calculator and put the statements back in the drawer, then went to bed, but I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I called my bank during my lunch break at work, sitting in my car in the parking lot, because I didn't want to have this conversation where anyone could overhear. I told them I needed to cancel the automatic monthly transfer to my daughter's account, and the representative asked if I wanted to suspend it temporarily or cancel it permanently. I said permanently, and she put me on hold for a minute to process it, then came back and confirmed it was done. She asked if there was anything else, and I said no, thanked her, and hung up. I sat there for a few more minutes before going back inside, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, like a weight had been lifted, but also like I'd just done something I couldn't take back. Not that I wanted to take it back, but it was that kind of feeling. A few days later, my daughter called, and I could tell right away she wanted something because her voice had that bright edge to it, the one she uses when she's about to ask for a favor. She said they were planning to give gift bags to all the guests at the party, nice ones with expensive items inside, and she'd found the perfect thing, but it was more than they'd budgeted for. She asked if I could order it online with my card, said she'd pay me back, but their credit cards were close to maxed out from the party expenses, and they couldn't wait for the next billing cycle. She gave me the name of the store and the item number. Talking fast like this was all totally normal, like nothing had happened with the whole situation about me not being invited. I told her I'd take care of it, and she sounded relieved, thanked me, said she had to run because the caterer was calling. I didn't order what she asked for, not exactly. I went online and looked at what she wanted, and it was ridiculous, something like $70 per item, and they needed 20 of them. Instead, I drove to a department store near my place and found something similar but simpler, nice enough but not extravagant, and I bought 20 of them for maybe a quarter of what she'd expected me to spend. They were perfectly fine, decent quality, the kind of thing you'd be happy to receive as a guest. I dropped them off at her house 2 days before the party, left them on the porch because no one was home, sent her a text that they were there. She called me an hour later and she wasn't happy, asking if I'd ordered the wrong thing by mistake because these weren't what she'd asked for. I said no, I'd gotten something different, something more reasonable, and there was a pause on the line. Then I heard her talking to someone in the background, her husband probably, and when she came back she said they couldn't use these because they didn't fit the aesthetic of the event. She said the guests would notice, that his boss would notice, that his parents would definitely notice. She asked if I could return them and get the right ones, said it was really important, and I said no. Just no, nothing else. She started to say something about how this was a big deal for them, how they'd been planning this for months, and I cut her off, told her I had to go, and hung up. She tried calling back twice, but I didn't answer. The party happened without me, obviously, and I didn't hear anything about it for a while. I went about my regular routine, work and home, and it was strange how little changed on the surface of my daily life. The difference was internal, like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that I'd forgotten it was there until I put it down. I slept better that week than I had in months. About 3 weeks later, my daughter called in the middle of the day, which was unusual because she knows I'm at work. I stepped outside to take it, and she sounded stressed, talking fast, asking if there was a problem with the bank transfer because it hadn't come through. She said she'd checked their account, and the usual deposit wasn't there, and she needed to know if I'd forgotten to send it or if there was some kind of technical issue. I canceled it, I said. The line went quiet for a moment, and then she asked why, her voice going up a little. I said I didn't think they needed it anymore, that they were doing well and had good jobs and owned a house, and it was time for me to stop. She started talking about their mortgage and their expenses and how they built their budget around that money, how they were counting on it. "We rely on that money, Dad," she said. "You can't just stop." I reminded her that the money was never guaranteed, that it was help I'd been giving voluntarily, not an obligation or a contract. She said that wasn't fair, that I'd been doing it for years and they'd made plans based on that. I asked her if she remembered the conversation about her birthday party, and she got quiet again. Then she said that was different. That was about the guest list and making sure everyone was comfortable, and I said it didn't feel different to me. She said I was being unreasonable, that I was punishing her over something small, and I told her I wasn't punishing anyone. I was just making a decision about my own money. Her voice changed then, got colder, and she said if that's how I wanted to be, then fine, but I shouldn't expect her to keep reaching out if I was going to be like this. If you do this, don't expect me to call anymore, she said. I told her that was her choice, and then she hung up. Her husband called me the next day, late in the evening, and he didn't bother with pleasantries. He said I was putting them in a terrible position, that they had financial obligations, and I'd created a situation where they couldn't meet them. He said it was irresponsible of me to cut them off without discussing it first, that this was going to cause serious problems for them. I asked him if he'd encouraged my daughter to uninvite me from the party, and he said that wasn't relevant to the current situation. I said it was relevant to me, and he said I was being petty. That family was supposed to support each other. I've been supporting you for 8 years, I said. I'm done. Then I hung up. He called back immediately, but I didn't answer, and when he called again an hour later, I blocked his number. Then I blocked my daughter's number too, and after that my phone was quiet. I made an appointment with an attorney the following week, someone I'd found through a referral from a guy at work. I told her I wanted to update my will, which I hadn't looked at since the divorce, and I wanted to make sure my daughter wasn't listed as a beneficiary. The attorney asked if I was sure, said these kinds of decisions could be changed later, but they could also create permanent family rifts. I said I was sure, and we went through the paperwork. I designated some charities instead, organizations I'd researched online, places that did work I thought was meaningful. The attorney drew up the documents, and I signed them a week later, and she filed copies with her office and gave me originals to keep. I put one copy in my safe deposit box at the bank and kept another in my apartment. It was straightforward, just forms and signatures, nothing dramatic. The months after that were quieter than I'd expected, not in a lonely way, but in a calm way, like when you finally fix a noise in your car that's been bothering you for years and suddenly you notice the silence. I kept working my regular shifts at the hospital, and for the first time in a long time I started putting real money into my retirement account instead of just the bare minimum. My bank statements looked different, healthier, and I'd catch myself looking at the balance sometimes and feeling something like relief. I got my apartment repainted that spring, hired someone to do it properly because I'd been living with the same dingy beige walls since I moved in over a decade ago. I picked a light gray for the living room and a warm white for the bedroom. Nothing fancy, but it made the whole place feel newer and cleaner. I bought a decent couch to replace the old one that had been sagging in the middle for years, and a new bed frame because mine had been squeaking every time I moved. These weren't extravagant purchases, just normal things that normal people do to maintain their living space, but they felt significant because I hadn't done anything like this for myself in so long. That summer, I took a week off work and drove up to Oregon, spent time hiking in the national forests up there, stayed in small motels along the way, ate at local diners, didn't plan much of anything in advance. It wasn't a luxury vacation, but it was exactly what I wanted, just me and the road and some beautiful scenery. I hadn't taken a real vacation in probably 15 years, and I'd forgotten what it felt like to just go somewhere because you wanted to, not because you had to or because someone else needed something. My daughter tried to reach out a few times through email since I'd blocked her number, messages that started apologetic and then shifted to angry and then back to apologetic again. She said we should talk, that family was important, that she hadn't meant for things to get this bad between us. She never mentioned the birthday party directly, never acknowledged what had actually happened, just talked around it like the issue was my reaction rather than what had caused it. I read the emails, but I didn't respond, and eventually they stopped coming. Her husband sent one email too, more formal, saying they were struggling financially and asking if we could work something out, maybe a smaller amount each month or a temporary loan. I deleted it without finishing it. I started planning for early retirement, talking to a financial advisor about what that would look like, and for the first time the numbers actually made sense. Without the monthly drain of supporting 2 other adults, I could realistically stop working at 62, maybe even 61 if I kept things modest. The advisor seemed pleased with my savings rate and my pension situation, said I was in better shape than a lot of people she saw. I scheduled another meeting for 6 months out to check progress, and I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt in years, like I had a future that belonged to me. About a year and a half after I'd cut off contact, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that my daughter and her husband had sold their house and moved to a smaller place across town. The acquaintance mentioned it casually, not knowing the situation between us, just making conversation. I nodded and changed the subject, but later I thought about that big house with the open-plan kitchen and the backyard, the one I'd helped them buy. I wondered if they'd had to sell because of the money or if there were other reasons, and then I realized it didn't really matter either way. It wasn't my problem anymore, and that thought didn't make me sad or angry. It just was what it was. I kept working, kept living my simple life, and I bought a newer used car to replace the 12-year-old one I'd been driving. Nothing flashy, but reliable with better gas mileage. I joined a hiking group that met on weekends, started going out to breakfast with a couple of guys from work every few weeks, small social things that I'd let slide over the years because I'd always been worried about money or thinking about the next transfer I needed to send. My life wasn't exciting or remarkable, but it was stable and it was mine, and I didn't owe anyone an explanation for how I spent my time or my money. Sometimes I'd think about calling her or unblocking her number to see if she'd tried to reach out, but I never did. The silence between us had become its own kind of normal, and I wasn't sure what breaking it would accomplish. She'd made it clear through her actions what my place was supposed to be in her life, and I'd made it clear through mine that I wasn't willing to accept that anymore. There wasn't much else to say. One evening about 3 years after all of this started, I was going through some boxes in my storage room looking for an old tax document, and I found a photo album I'd forgotten about. I sat down on the floor and flipped through it. Pictures from when my daughter was young, birthday parties and school events and family vacations back when we were still a family. There was one photo of her at maybe 7 or 8 years old, gap-toothed smile, holding up a drawing she'd made, so proud of herself. I looked at it for a while, and I felt something. Not quite sadness, but not quite nothing either. Just a recognition that this person in the photo and the person who'd uninvited me from her party were the same individual, even though they felt completely different to me now. I put the album back in the box and finished looking for the document I needed. Then I made myself dinner, watched some TV, and went to bed at my usual time. The next morning I got up and went to work like always, and the morning after that, and the one after that. My life continued in its quiet way, and I was okay with that. Better than okay, actually. I'd stopped waiting for something to change, or for someone to apologize, or for things to go back to how they used to be. This was just how things were now, and I'd made my peace with it. The apartment was quiet when I came home each day, but it was a peaceful kind of quiet. The kind where you don't have to worry about the phone ringing with another request or another crisis that somehow required money to solve. I could sit at my kitchen table with my morning coffee and not think about anyone else's mortgage or car payment or credit card bill. I could plan a trip or buy something I needed without calculating whether I could afford it after sending thousands of dollars to someone else. It was a small life, maybe, but it was fully mine, and that turned out to be enough.
Well, that's how it played out. No big scene, no dramatic ending. He just stopped sending the money and let things fall where they did. Maybe he could have handled parts of it differently. Maybe not. It's hard to know once you're already in the middle of something like that. What do you think? Was there another way this could have gone?